I was bustling around the kitchen, my hands busy with chopping vegetables and stirring a pot of simmering sauce. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the room, creating a comforting backdrop to the routine evening I was trying to maintain. It had become our little ritual, me preparing dinner while Catherine returned home from her long day at the radio station. Catherine's voice cut through the clatter of pots and pans as she entered the kitchen. "Hey, Jake," she said, her tone lacking its usual warmth. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her shoulders slumped and her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. It wasn't the first time she'd come home looking this way, but it had been more frequent recently. "Hey, Catherine," I replied, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "How was your day?" She shrugged, her face a mask of fatigue. Same old, busy as usual." She placed her bag on the counter and began to remove her coat, but her movements were slow and mechanical, lacking the usual energy she had. I watched her for a moment, my concern growing. "You seem tired tonight. Is everything okay?" Catherine offered a weak smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "It's just the workload. You know how it is with radio. There's always something that needs attention. It's just been a bit overwhelming lately." I nodded, though the pit in my stomach told me something was off. Her job at the radio station had always been demanding, but she used to come home with a spark of enthusiasm, ready to unwind and share stories from her day. Lately, though, she'd been distant, her stories terse and her demeanor distant. I tried to lighten the mood. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Why don't you sit down and relax for a bit? I'll have everything on the table in no time." Catherine nodded, her movements still sluggish, and she sank into one of the kitchen chairs. I could see her eyes drift to the clock on the wall, as if she was already counting the minutes until she could collapse into bed. As I continued to cook, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more troubling her than just the stresses of work. I tried to engage her in conversation about her day, hoping to peel away the layers of fatigue and find out what was going on. But as the minutes ticked by, her responses were short and noncommittal, adding to the unease I was feeling. Tonight, dinner was supposed to be a reprieve, a chance for us to reconnect and share some warmth after the day's trials. But as I looked at Catherine's weary face, I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that something deeper was at play. The evening settled into a quiet routine, the once comforting sounds of cooking now filled with a heavy silence. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the calm before a storm I hadn't yet recognized. Dinner was finally served, and I was relieved to see Catherine taking a bit more interest as she picked up her fork and began eating. I tried to keep the conversation light, sharing anecdotes from my day and asking about hers. But as we were halfway through our meal, her phone rang, cutting through the ambient clinking of cutlery and the soft hum of the kitchen. Catherine's face tensed when she saw the caller ID. I could see her hesitation before she quickly answered, her voice dipping into a strained, professional tone. "Hi, Alex. What's up?" I glanced at her, sensing the abrupt shift in her mood. She spoke in short, clipped sentences, her eyes darting nervously toward the window. The conversation was brief, but enough to notice that something had changed. After she hung up, Catherine's demeanor was markedly different. The small smile she had managed earlier was gone, replaced by a rigid expression and a fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. She seemed even more withdrawn than before, as if the phone call had drained her of any remaining energy. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual but unable to hide the concern in my voice. Catherine looked up, her eyes avoiding mine. "Yeah, it's just work stuff," she replied, her tone a bit too dismissive. "Nothing important." I could tell there was more to it, though. Her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her glass of water and she avoided eye contact. I pressed on, hoping to get her to open up. "It didn't sound like it was just work. You seemed a bit tense." She sighed, looking down at her plate. "Jake, it's nothing. Alex just needed to ask about a project. You know how it is with radio? Things come up unexpectedly." I wanted to push further, but I could see she was shutting down. The cheerful atmosphere I had hoped for was slipping away, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. I decided to let it go for now, but the unease in Catherine's behavior was gnawing at me. As we finished dinner, I tried to keep the conversation going, but Catherine's responses were brief and distracted. She barely touched her dessert and excused herself early, claiming she was exhausted from the day. I watched her retreat to the bedroom, her shoulders hunched and her steps heavy. Alone in the quiet kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that the phone call from Alex was a turning point. Something was off, and whatever it was seemed to be pulling Catherine further away. I stood there, the remnants of our meal cooling on the table, feeling a growing sense of dread. The evening had taken a turn I hadn't anticipated, and I was left grappling with the silent but palpable shift in our lives. Over the next few weeks, the subtle changes in Catherine's behavior became more pronounced. The first thing I noticed was the shift in her daily routine. She was spending longer hours at the radio station, often coming home late or even skipping dinner altogether. Her schedule seemed to be in constant flux, and it became increasingly difficult to pin down her exact whereabouts. At first, I tried to chalk it up to the pressures of her job. Radio work could be demanding, and I understood that sometimes she needed to stay late to meet deadlines or handle unexpected tasks. But as time went on, it became clear that something more was going on. Catherine's phone was the next sign. It was always on Do Not Disturb, even during the times we usually spent together. She used to leave her phone within easy reach, but now it was constantly tucked away in her purse or on the kitchen counter with the screen face down. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off with a casual comment like, "Just some work calls I don't want to be interrupted by." Her sudden frequent absences became a topic of concern. I found myself sitting alone at the dinner table more often than not, waiting for her to come home. When she did make it back, she was often too tired to engage in any meaningful conversation. Her responses were clipped, and she seemed to be constantly preoccupied with something else. One evening, I returned from running some errands to find Catherine's phone sitting on the counter, face up. The screen flashed with an incoming message from Alex, her colleague at the radio station. My heart sank as I saw the name, but I quickly averted my gaze. I knew it was a breach of privacy, but the sight of the message, combined with Catherine's increasing secrecy, left me feeling unsettled. When I confronted her about it later, Catherine's reaction was defensive. "Jake, it's just work," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Alex and I are just coordinating on some projects. It's nothing to worry about." I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was mounting. The little things, the constant changes in her schedule, the phone always on silent, the brief and distant conversations, were beginning to paint a picture I wasn't ready to see. The emotional distance between us grew wider with each passing day. I found myself questioning what had shifted in our relationship, why my once warm and engaged wife had become so elusive. I began to wonder if the changes in her habits were more than just work-related stress and if they pointed to something deeper. The growing realization that Catherine was becoming less available and more secretive gnawed at me. I tried to keep my worries to myself, but the unease was becoming harder to ignore. The cracks in our once solid relationship were becoming more apparent, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was being hidden from me. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I had decided to tidy up the house while Catherine was out. She had mentioned she was working on some urgent projects at the radio station and would be home late. I was putting away some items in our bedroom when I noticed her purse lying open on the dresser. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of me. I reached over and began to sift through its contents. As I was organizing her scattered belongings, something caught my eye, a small envelope wedged between a pile of receipts and makeup. The envelope was marked with a faint stamp and addressed to her, but it was slightly translucent, revealing a hint of color inside. I pulled out the envelope and opened it, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Inside were 2 concert tickets, and my heart skipped a beat as I read the details. The tickets were for a popular band playing that evening, the same night Catherine was supposed to be working late at the station. I tried to process the information, my mind racing. Catherine had never mentioned this concert. We'd talked about going to events together, but this was news to me. The fact that she hadn't mentioned it at all, combined with her frequent absences and her increasing secrecy, felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. The tickets were for a venue that was quite a drive away, and the timing was such that Catherine would have had to leave work early to make it. I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to these tickets than just a spontaneous outing. The realization that Catherine had been planning to attend this concert without telling me made my stomach churn. It felt like another layer of the distance growing between us. I put the tickets back in the envelope and placed them carefully where I found them, trying to avoid disturbing anything. I needed to approach this delicately. Confronting Catherine with this discovery might lead to further conflict or denial. As I cleaned up the room, my thoughts kept drifting back to the tickets. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were a significant clue. It wasn't just about the concert, it was about what Catherine wasn't telling me. The tickets represented a secret she had been keeping, and the timing of the event, on a night she had promised to be working late, felt like a betrayal. The more I thought about it, the more my unease grew. I knew I needed to find out the truth, but I also knew that how I handled this revelation could change everything. For now, though, I had to wait and see if Catherine would offer any more clues about her mysterious plans. The night of the concert arrived, and my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I had decided to follow the trail of the tickets and see for myself what was happening. I tried to calm my nerves as I drove toward the venue, replaying the events of the past few weeks in my mind. Each mile felt heavier than the last, and I struggled to suppress the growing sense of dread. As I parked my car and approached the entrance of the venue, the buzz of excited fans filled the air. I scanned the crowd, searching for Catherine. I didn't have a concrete plan for what I would do once I found her, but I felt compelled to see if my suspicions were valid. The concert hall was abuzz with anticipation, the lights dimming as the crowd cheered. I made my way inside, blending in with the throng of people. I found a spot that offered a good view of the stage and waited. My eyes continuously searched the crowd, hoping to catch a glimpse of Catherine. As the opening band finished their set and the lights began to brighten for a brief intermission, I spotted her. Catherine was standing near the front of the stage, her face lit up with genuine excitement. She was talking animatedly with someone beside her, someone I recognized as Alex, a colleague from the radio station. They were standing close together, their body language unmistakably intimate. Catherine was laughing at something Alex had said, and he responded with a broad, affectionate smile. They appeared completely absorbed in each other, their connection more evident than I had ever seen before. Watching them, I felt a pang of betrayal and hurt. It wasn't just the physical proximity, it was the ease with which they interacted, the way Catherine's eyes sparkled with joy whenever she looked at him. It was clear that their relationship went beyond mere colleagues. They seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely, as if they were in their private world. I stood there, struggling to reconcile the sight before me with the woman I thought I knew. Catherine's earlier denials and evasive behavior started to make sense. It wasn't just a casual friendship or a work-related distraction. It was something deeper, something that had been building for a while. The concert resumed, but I was barely aware of the music. My mind was focused on Catherine and Alex, their interactions cementing my fears. I could see that Catherine had been hiding something significant from me, and this outing was more than just a night out. It was a reveal of a relationship that had been growing in secret. As the show continued, I made my way out of the venue, my heart heavy with the weight of what I had seen. The sight of Catherine so engaged with Alex was a painful confirmation of my suspicions. I knew I needed to confront her, but I was unsure of how to approach the situation. The evening provided clarity, but it also left me with more questions and a deep sense of betrayal that I needed to process. The following days were a haze of confusion and disquiet. The sight of Catherine and Alex together at the concert replayed in my mind like a persistent echo. I found myself constantly on edge, searching for more clues about the nature of their relationship. The sense of betrayal I felt was overwhelming, and it was affecting every aspect of our daily life. Catherine's behavior continued to be erratic. She was still frequently late, often returning home with an air of distraction, and her phone remained perpetually on Do Not Disturb. The distance between us grew, and every interaction felt strained and mechanical. One afternoon, as I was tidying up the living room, I noticed Catherine's phone lying on the coffee table. It was a rare moment when she left it unattended, and I felt an unsettling mix of guilt and urgency. I hesitated for a moment but then decided to glance at her messages. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but my need for answers overpowered my reservations. I unlocked the phone and navigated to the messaging app. The screen was filled with conversations, but one thread stood out. It was with Alex. As I read through the messages, my heart sank further with each line. The texts between Catherine and Alex were filled with affectionate and intimate language. Phrases like, "I miss you and can't wait to see you again" jumped out at me. Some messages spoke of private moments they had shared, plans for future meetups, and terms of endearment that went beyond friendly camaraderie. One message in particular caught my eye. "I've been thinking about our last night together. It was so special to me." My pulse quickened as I read those words. It was a clear indication that their relationship had crossed boundaries that went far beyond a simple professional connection. I felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over me. This was more than I had suspected. Catherine and Alex were involved in a relationship that was deeply personal and emotional, if not physical. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything I had feared was true. The secret affair I had dreaded was real, and it was unfolding right under my nose. I put the phone back where I had found it, trying to steady my trembling hands. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I had uncovered. How had things escalated to this point? Why hadn't Catherine been honest with me? The discovery of these messages was both a painful confirmation and a call to action. I knew I couldn't continue living in this uncertainty. I needed to confront Catherine and address the betrayal head-on. But as I contemplated the inevitable confrontation, I was also grappling with the emotional weight of what had been revealed. The clarity of the situation only deepened my sense of hurt, and I felt an urgent need to find out how this had come to be and what it meant for our future. The evening was heavy with the tension of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Catherine arrived home later than usual, her usual excuse of work-related tasks seeming increasingly hollow. The sight of her, so oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, only fueled my resolve to address the issue directly. We had just finished dinner, and the table was cleared. Catherine was making her way to the living room when I stopped her, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that the conversation I was about to have could alter everything between us. "Catherine, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I could see her hesitation as she glanced at me, her face quickly masked with a neutral expression. "Sure, Jake. What's on your mind?" she asked, though the way she fidgeted with her napkin betrayed her nervousness. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time with Alex lately. Your behavior has changed, and I've seen messages between you two that are more than just friendly." Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a step back. "Jake, I don't know what you're talking about." I tried to remain calm, but the frustration in my voice was evident. "I found the concert tickets in your bag. I saw the messages. Something is going on between you and Alex. I need you to be honest with me." Catherine's face flushed, and she took a moment to compose herself. "Jake, Alex is just a colleague. We've been working on projects together, and sometimes we go to events as part of the work. The messages you saw were just professional discussions that might have seemed intimate out of context." I could see the effort she was making to maintain her composure, but her words did little to quell the storm inside me. Professional discussions? Catherine, those messages were personal. They talked about feelings and moments that go beyond mere work. "You've been hiding things from me." She shook her head, her voice growing defensive. "You're misunderstanding everything. Alex has been supportive because he's a friend and a colleague. The concert tickets were just a coincidence. It was a last-minute decision, and I didn't think it was a big deal." I struggled to keep my anger in check. "A coincidence? Catherine, this isn't just about the tickets. It's about the secrecy, the distance, and the intimate conversations. It feels like you're not being truthful with me." Her eyes softened, and she took a deep breath. "Jake, I didn't want to hurt you. Alex and I have developed a close friendship, but it hasn't crossed any lines. I'm sorry if it seemed that way, but I promise you, it's nothing more than that." The denial in her voice was palpable, but I wasn't convinced. The evidence was too clear, and the hurt I felt was too deep. "Catherine, I need you to be honest with me. We can't move forward if you keep hiding things. This isn't just about our relationship. It's about trust and honesty." She looked down, her expression a mix of frustration and sadness. "I'm telling you the truth, Jake. I don't know how else to explain it. If you can't believe me, then I don't know what else to say." The conversation ended in a silence that was as heavy as the words left unspoken. I felt a deep ache in my chest as Catherine retreated to the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The confrontation had not yielded the clarity I had hoped for, but it had forced us to confront the growing chasm between us. As I sat there, the weight of the evening pressed down on me, and I knew that the path forward would not be easy. The truth remained elusive, and the trust that had once bound us was now frayed and uncertain. The conversation with Catherine left me feeling more unsettled than before. Her assurances of innocence did little to ease the gnawing sense of doubt that had taken root. I knew I couldn't ignore my growing suspicions any longer. I needed concrete evidence to understand what was truly happening between her and Alex. The days following our confrontation were filled with a heightened sense of vigilance. I began to notice more subtle signs of Catherine's frequent absences. She was often out at odd hours, and even when she was home, her phone was always within arm's reach, perpetually on silent mode. One evening, Catherine left for what she described as a late meeting at the radio station. I took this opportunity to delve deeper into her phone and find the answers I needed. With a combination of nervous energy and determination, I went through her phone once more, this time with a clearer goal in mind. I accessed her messaging app and found the conversation thread with Alex. The messages were more revealing than I had hoped. As I scrolled through the exchanges, I found numerous instances where their dialogue crossed the line between professional and personal. One message stood out. "I keep thinking about the time we spent together last weekend. It felt so right, like we were meant to be together." This was followed by a response from Alex. "I can't stop thinking about you either. Every moment away from you feels like an eternity." The emotional intensity of their exchanges was undeniable. It was evident that their relationship was far more than a casual friendship or professional rapport. The messages were filled with declarations of longing, affection, and even plans, painting a clear picture of a romantic and intimate connection. Determined to gather more evidence, I began to piece together the timeline of their interactions. I found receipts and calendar entries that indicated their meetings outside of work. There were dinner reservations, tickets to events, and notes about private outings. These documents confirmed that Catherine and Alex had been spending significant time together away from the office. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. I found phone records showing frequent and lengthy calls between them, often during times when Catherine had claimed to be busy with work. The pattern was becoming more evident. Their relationship was not just a fleeting affair, but an ongoing, committed connection. One night, while Catherine was out, I decided to search through her personal belongings, hoping to find anything else that might confirm my suspicions. In her drawer, I found a small notebook where she had jotted down personal thoughts and plans. Flipping through its pages, I came across notes that referred to Alex in a way that went beyond mere friendship. Phrases like, "thinking about our future" and "feeling so alive with you" were scattered throughout the pages. Each new piece of evidence felt like a punch to the gut. I was piecing together a narrative of betrayal and deceit, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to deny the reality of the situation. The evidence was mounting, and the picture it painted was one of a deep and intimate affair. As I put everything back in place, my mind was racing with a mix of anger, sadness, and resolve. I now had the proof I needed, but the task of confronting Catherine with this overwhelming evidence loomed ahead. The trust that had once defined our relationship was shattered, and the path forward was uncertain. All I knew was that I needed to address the truth head-on, no matter how painful it might be. The weight of the evidence was crushing. Each discovery, whether it was a message, a calendar entry, or a note, felt like a fresh wound, reopening with every piece of proof. As I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, the room that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to close in on me, echoing the pain and betrayal that had taken root in my heart. I'd always thought of Catherine as my rock, my constant through the ups and downs of life. We had shared so many years, building a life, a home, and countless memories. The realization that she had been unfaithful and involved in a deep and personal relationship with someone else was more than just a blow. It was a devastation that shook me to my core. The discovery that Catherine was seeing Alex, someone she worked with and had always spoken about with casual admiration, was jarring. The intimacy of their messages and the time they spent together all pointed to a betrayal I had never imagined possible. It was as if the foundation of our life together had crumbled beneath me, and I was left standing amidst the debris, trying to make sense of the wreckage. I couldn't help but replay moments from our past, wondering if there were signs I had missed or if there were times when her mind had been elsewhere. Every shared laugh, every tender moment now felt tainted, as if I'd been living a lie. The memories that had once brought comfort now seemed like a cruel reminder of the illusion of trust. The emotional pain was sharp and unrelenting. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for the relationship, but for the person I thought I knew so well. The woman who had been my partner, my confidant, was now someone I struggled to recognize. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair, it was about the erosion of trust and the sense of being deceived by someone I had loved and respected. As the hours ticked by, I found myself grappling with waves of emotion. Anger surged through me, directed at Catherine for her betrayal and at Alex for becoming an unwelcome part of our lives. Sadness followed closely behind, a profound grief for the relationship that had been shattered and the future that now seemed uncertain. The pain of realizing that Catherine's affections had shifted away from me was almost unbearable. I had been left to confront a painful truth. The person I thought was devoted to me had been sharing her life, her love, and her secrets with someone else. The silence of the house was deafening, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. I sat in the dark, trying to come to terms with the reality of my situation. Every thought seemed to amplify the hurt, and every memory felt like a reminder of what had been lost. In the quiet of that moment, I felt utterly alone, grappling with a profound sense of betrayal and heartache. The path ahead was unclear, and the emotional weight of the situation left me feeling both lost and overwhelmed. The confrontation had left a thick fog of uncertainty hanging over us. For days, the house had been steeped in silence, the kind of silence that presses on you and makes every word seem monumental. Catherine had sensed the change in our dynamic, and eventually, she asked to talk. We sat across from each other in the living room, the same space where so many conversations had taken place over the years. Tonight, it felt different, charged with an emotional intensity that made every movement and gesture seem significant. Catherine looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep and the weight of the situation. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice wavering slightly. "Jake, I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am. I know that what I've done has hurt you deeply, and that was never my intention." I met her gaze, trying to steady my own emotions. "Catherine, we've been through so much together. I can't even begin to describe the pain and confusion I'm feeling right now. But you owe me more than just an apology. I need to understand what this means for us." She nodded, her face a mixture of regret and determination. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I've come to realize that my feelings for Alex have grown beyond just friendship. He's become someone important to me, and I want to be honest about that." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I had hoped for a different outcome, perhaps one where we could work through the issues and find a way to rebuild our trust. But Catherine's admission made it clear that her heart was now divided. "I've tried to make sense of what we have," she continued, her voice trembling. "I understand that I've hurt you beyond measure. I never wanted to betray you, but I also don't want to keep living a lie. Alex and I have something real, and I can't just ignore that." Her confession left me reeling. I had expected a fight for our relationship, a willingness to work through the betrayal. Instead, she seemed resolute in her decision to pursue a future with Alex. It was a painful and sobering realization that our relationship might not be salvageable. "I don't know how to process all of this," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "I've always believed in us, and I thought we could overcome anything together, but now everything feels shattered. I need time to think about what this means for us." Catherine reached out, her hand trembling as she touched mine. "Jake, I understand if you need space. I know I've caused irreparable damage, and I'm truly sorry for that. If you decide that you can't forgive me, I will accept that. But I hope you can at least understand that my feelings for Alex are real." Her words echoed in the room, mingling with the painful silence that followed. The gravity of the situation settled over me, and I knew I had to take time to reflect on what the future held. The betrayal had created a rift too deep to ignore, and I needed to consider whether our marriage could be mended or if it was time to part ways. As Catherine left the room, I was left alone with my thoughts, grappling with the enormity of the decision ahead. The future of our marriage was now uncertain, and the path forward was shrouded in doubt. The only thing I knew for sure was that I needed time to process, to grieve, and to ultimately decide what was best for both of us. The days following our conversation were a blur of emotional turmoil and introspection. Catherine and I had taken a step back from our daily routines, each of us needing time to process the revelations and decide on the future of our relationship. Our once shared space felt like a battlefield of unspoken words and unresolved feelings, and navigating this new reality was proving to be more complex than either of us had anticipated. Catherine had moved into the guest room, a physical separation that mirrored the emotional distance between us. We still saw each other around the house, but our interactions were strained and cautious. Each conversation was laden with the weight of what had happened, and every glance seemed to carry unspoken questions and unresolved pain. One evening, after several days of this uneasy truce, Catherine suggested we sit down together to talk. I agreed, knowing that avoiding the conversation would only prolong our suffering and uncertainty. We met in the living room, sitting across from each other. The same room that had once been filled with warmth and laughter now seemed like a place of confrontation. Catherine looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and hope. "Jake, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know that what I did has changed everything between us, and I need to understand if there's a way forward for us." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I've been thinking too. The betrayal has shaken me to my core, and I'm struggling with how things have changed. I can't ignore the fact that our relationship is different now, but I also can't deny that there were good times and a deep connection between us." We both paused, trying to find the right words to articulate our feelings. The sense of loss was palpable, but there was also a glimmer of something else, a recognition that despite the hurt, there was still a part of us that wanted to understand if the trust and love could be rebuilt. "I realize," Catherine said, her voice breaking slightly, "that my actions have altered the foundation of our relationship. I've been reflecting on what led me to make these choices and the impact they've had on us. I want to be honest with myself and with you. I'm willing to work on this if you are." Her willingness to face the situation honestly was a small but significant step. It signaled a desire to address the issues rather than avoid them. I could see the effort she was making to understand her feelings and the implications of her actions. "I appreciate your honesty," I replied. "It's hard for me to see past the betrayal, but I also understand that we need to confront what's happened if we want to find a way forward. Rebuilding trust won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. We'll need to be patient with ourselves and with each other." We both knew that simply acknowledging our feelings wasn't enough to mend what had been broken. It would take work, dedication, and a willingness to confront difficult truths. The path to healing was uncertain, and the future of our relationship was still in question. "We should consider counseling," I suggested. "It might help us navigate these feelings and find a way to address the issues more constructively. It could be a step towards understanding what went wrong and how we can move forward." Catherine agreed, her expression reflecting a mix of relief and apprehension. "I think that's a good idea. I'm willing to try if you are. I want us to find a way to understand each other better and see if there's a possibility of rebuilding what we once had." As we concluded our conversation, there was a tentative sense of hope. The road ahead was still unclear, but the willingness to confront our feelings and seek help was a crucial first step. The realization that our relationship had changed was painful, but it also opened up the possibility for growth and understanding. We both knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but facing it together, with honesty and commitment, was a start. The future of our relationship was still uncertain, but for the first time in days, there was a glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to navigate the complexities and rebuild the trust that had been lost. The weeks that followed were marked by a series of intense conversations and emotional sessions. Catherine and I had made a concerted effort to address the betrayal, attempting to navigate the chasm that had formed between us. We engaged in open discussions about our feelings, sought counseling, and tried to understand where we stood in the wake of the affair. Yet, despite our efforts, the path to reconciliation remained elusive. It became increasingly clear that the trust we once had was deeply fractured. Each attempt to rebuild it felt like a band-aid on a wound that required more profound healing. Our sessions with the counselor provided insights, but also highlighted the fundamental changes in our relationship dynamic. The emotional distance between us was palpable, and while we both wanted to find a way forward, the reality of the situation weighed heavily on us. One evening, after another round of deep and exhausting discussions, Catherine broached the subject that had been hovering between us. We sat in the living room, the same room where we had shared so many moments, now a place of decision and finality. "Jake," Catherine began, her voice soft but resolute. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. The distance between us is something we can't easily bridge. My feelings for Alex have grown stronger, and I've come to realize that I want to pursue a future with him." Her words felt like a final blow, a confirmation of the direction she had been heading. It was both heartbreaking and, in a way, relieving. The decision, though painful, was now out in the open. I took a deep breath, struggling to process the finality of the moment. "Catherine, I've come to understand that despite all our efforts, the reality of your feelings for Alex and the damage done to our relationship has created a gap that's too wide to close. I appreciate your honesty, but it's clear that we need to accept the reality of our situation." Her eyes were filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. "I know this is difficult, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I've caused you. I didn't want it to end like this, but I also can't ignore what I feel. I believe that both of us deserve the chance to find happiness, even if it means going our separate ways." The decision to part ways was not made lightly. It was the result of countless discussions, emotional struggles, and a deep reflection on what was best for both of us. We had tried to salvage what we had, but the reality was that the foundation of our relationship had been irrevocably altered. We spent the next few days working through the logistics of our separation. We discussed practical matters, dividing belongings, addressing financial concerns, and figuring out the next steps for each of us. It was a process filled with a mixture of sadness, practicality, and an underlying hope for a new beginning. As we faced the reality of our separation, there was a shared sense of loss and acceptance. The end of our relationship marked the conclusion of a chapter filled with shared dreams, laughter, and deep connection. It was a chapter that would be remembered with both fondness and pain. On the day of our separation, we stood outside the house that had been our home, the place where we had built so many memories. The finality of the moment was heavy, and we embraced one last time, a gesture of farewell to the life we had shared. "I wish you the best, Catherine," I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. "I hope you find the happiness you're seeking." "Thank you, Jake," she replied, her eyes glistening with tears. "I wish you the same. You deserve to find peace and happiness." As Catherine left, I watched her go, feeling the weight of our decision settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with the challenge of moving on and finding a new path. The end of our relationship was a poignant reminder of the complexities of love, trust, and the inevitable changes that life brings. In the quiet that followed her departure, I was left to reflect on the journey we had shared and to begin the process of healing and rebuilding my own life. The future was unknown, but the decision to part ways was a necessary step towards finding a new beginning. The house was eerily quiet now. Catherine's departure marked the end of an era, one that had been filled with both joy and profound challenges. As I walked through the empty rooms, I couldn't help but reflect on the life we had built together, now reduced to a collection of memories and a few lingering echoes of what once was. The days following our separation were a whirlwind of emotions. I spent my time sorting through the remnants of our life together, packing away personal items, and slowly turning the page on a chapter that had been so significant. Each object I touched, a photograph, a memento, a piece of furniture, carried a weight of nostalgia and sadness, but also a reminder of the growth and change that had come from this experience. Amid this upheaval, I found solace in routine. I returned to work with a sense of determination, channeling my energy into projects and tasks that required my full attention. The distraction was welcome, providing a temporary escape from the emotional weight I carried. Slowly, I began to reclaim parts of my life that had been overshadowed by the recent turmoil. I also sought new ways to heal and grow. I started attending therapy sessions, where I could talk openly about my feelings and gain perspective on the lessons learned from the relationship. It was a space where I could explore my emotions in a structured way, unraveling the complexities of the past and working towards a healthier mindset. Exercise became a therapeutic outlet. I took up running, finding a sense of freedom and clarity with each step. The physical activity not only helped with stress, but also provided a much-needed break from the constant internal dialogue of pain and reflection. With every run, I felt a bit lighter, as if shedding layers of hurt and starting to build a new sense of self. Socially, I reconnected with friends and family. Their support was invaluable during this time, offering a reminder that I wasn't alone in facing the challenges of change. Sharing experiences, laughter, and moments of normalcy helped me feel grounded and connected to a broader network of relationships that had always been there, but had taken a back seat during the turbulence of my marriage. As the months passed, I began to see the contours of a new life emerging. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but about integrating the lessons learned into a more hopeful future. I realized that the experience had taught me about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of facing difficult truths. It had shown me that even in the face of profound betrayal, there was an opportunity for personal growth and renewal. Catherine's departure had left a void, but it had also opened up space for new possibilities. I started exploring hobbies and interests that had been put aside. I took up painting, a creative outlet that allowed me to express my feelings differently. I began volunteering, finding fulfillment in contributing to causes that mattered to me. These activities became a way to reconnect with myself and discover new aspects of my identity. In the quiet moments when I allowed myself to reflect, I felt a mixture of sadness and acceptance. The pain of the past was a part of my journey, but it no longer defined me. I had come to terms with the end of my marriage and was learning to embrace the uncertainty of the future with a sense of cautious optimism. The process of moving forward was gradual and filled with its own set of challenges, but I approached it with a renewed sense of purpose. The lessons from my experience with Catherine became a guide, helping me navigate the complexities of rebuilding my life. I knew that the road ahead would have its ups and downs, but I was committed to forging a path that aligned with my newfound understanding and sense of self. As I closed the door of our shared home for the last time, I took a deep breath and looked forward. The future was a blank canvas, and I was ready to paint it with the colors of hope, resilience, and new beginnings. The journey of healing and growth had just begun, and I was determined to face it with courage and an open heart.